Hey everybody, welcome to Jacob's Quest, and welcome to my very late review of the final episode of Daredevil Born Again, Season 1. There's going to be a Season 2. And yeah, this episode contains probably one of the most graphic scenes I've ever seen in a Disney Plus show. I know that recent Marvel stuff has kind of been ramping up its level of violence and rated R style, like, gruesomeness, you know? I mean, hell, we had Wanda Maximoff exploding a person's head on screen in theaters only a couple years ago, right? So, you know, they're definitely getting more violent in Marvel. But this was kind of crazy what Kingpin did. But, you know, if you've seen the episode, you know what I'm talking about. Anyways, yeah, so here at the finale, it feels like we finally kind of tie everything together. You know, we get another great scene of Daredevil and Punisher fighting with each other, fighting a group of people. Karen makes another cameo. You know, and it really just feels like everything finally is, you know, falling into place. Like we're actually focused on one thing. And that's kind of my thing about this entire season, is that, like, we knew this coming in, that they had rewritten and reshot and restructured this entire thing, because originally I think this was going to be like, what, 14 episodes, and now we're ended up with 9. So clearly, like, half of this show was ripped out, and then they completely redid the first episode and the last 2 episodes, and they sprinkled new footage in between, and they tried to make it all seem like it was meant to be this way. I think it's clear to a lot of people, like, all right, you can see the seams, you can see where they did a lot of stitching and they tried to, like, Frankenstein this thing a little bit. Having said that, this last episode is pretty great. You know, I feel like him declaring martial law, him, like, you know, we knew it was his own private army, this, like, task force, but now it's, like, very clear, like, oh, he's legitimately gone full villain again. Doesn't care about the optics or how it looks to voters or whatever. He's declared martial law. He can shut down the power when he wants. Kingpin has legitimately taken over this city, and Daredevil is gonna have to raise an army, seemingly of, I guess, good cops, or like just his friends. Like, he was in the bar, he was in Josie's at the end. It was a couple of cops that we've seen every once in a while in a couple episodes, and then, you know, that reporter guy. You know, I don't know how much of an army this is. Like, I thought maybe he would have other vigilantes, but I don't know. Anyways, Kingpin, of course, has arrested the swordsman and a bunch of his other people that he's, you know, the other rich people that he's gotten into arguments with. And of course, Punisher got arrested at some point after taking down like 7-8 guys. And again, this episode really violent, really cool. It almost felt like this episode was trying to make up for, like, okay, we introduced the Punisher a couple episodes ago. You know, we kind of, like, teased that, like, you're gonna get some Punisher action. Here's the payoff. You know, like, you're really gonna get it now, and they delivered. You know, plenty of Punisher violence. So it was pretty cool. And yeah, basically we just ended here on a cliffhanger, which I didn't really expect, because I didn't think that a season 2 had been greenlit by the time this one was done, but I suppose it had, because they're already working on it. But in any case, yeah, we just kind of end on this cliffhanger of Kingpin taking over New York City. Now, is this ever going to be mentioned in any of the movies? I don't know. It might be, because, I mean, it feels significant enough that, like, you know, how do you do a Spider-Man movie now without mentioning that New York City is under martial law, and the Kingpin is mayor and all that stuff, right? It feels like you have to mention it. And there's been a lot of rumors about the next Spider-Man movie, and no one really knows what's going on. Some people said it was going to be a multiverse thing. Other people said, no, the next Spider-Man is going to be a more grounded, you know, Spider-Man story. Very unclear on what's going on with that movie, but if it's in New York, I don't see how you can't not mention everything that's happening now in New York. So I don't know. I guess we're going to find out how that works out. But it feels like this should have consequences for the rest of the MCU, because for a while there, especially phase 1, phase 2, the MCU was very New York focused. It was like that was like the center of their world for a little while there, or in their early days, and it feels like this is pretty significant. Now, I guess my other thing is, how is the federal government not getting involved here? Like, I understand that Fisk himself can just, you know, he can just declare martial law as, like, I guess the mayor, but it feels like at some point the National Guard would come in, or somebody, you know, a senator or a congressman or something would come in and be like, so what's going on here? What's the problem exactly? What is this task force you've assembled? What's happening? So I don't know. That's just me. That's my major question right now, is like, how is he keeping even higher up political figures like out of this situation? Because this is something that, you know, I think American politicians would want to know about. Like, yeah, I'm sorry, you're taking like the biggest city in America and what's happening now? You know, so I think that's a big question I got. But in any case, there is an after credits scene. Punisher does manages to, or seemingly he manages to escape from his cell, so that's pretty cool. You know, I'm assuming we might get some kind of Punisher project. I think there was rumors of there being what do they call them now, spotlights. You know, there might be like a little hour-and-a-half spotlight special on the Punisher or something. I think that was a rumor. I don't know if that's actually going to happen. And yeah, I think I'm excited for season 2, especially because it feels like it's actually going to be focused. It's going to be made from the ground up by a team who is going to actually have their vision shown. And I do got to say this. As much as I've been saying how disjointed this entire season has felt, and I'm kind of like nitpicking at that in all these reviews, I do kind of feel bad for the original people who were making the show. You know, I mean, you gotta feel bad for them a little bit, right? Because, you know, they were going for a different tone. They were told that it's in a different continuity. You know, like, they were probably told all these things, and they made this entire show in this way only for, you know, whoever it was at Marvel. You know, I guess ultimately Kevin Feige, but whoever it was at first who was like, oh, social media hates this. Social media is blowing up because we're not Netflix continuity, or we're not, you know, in tone with the Netflix show. So we got to revamp this whole thing. We got to spend millions of dollars. We got to scrap half of these people's work and get these other people in here, replace all this. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I kind of feel bad for the original people who are making the show, because only like half of your show is in here anymore, and then you're not gonna be involved with the next season. And I don't know, it feels kind of like shitty a little bit. And I know the fans kind of demanded, like, it's got to be dark and gritty, it's got to be like the Netflix show. And, you know, hey, maybe that's for the betterment of the show. Like, maybe this is better than what we would have gotten. But I don't know, still though, I'm like, oh man, that sucks though, right? Because I'm sure there's other people only made probably a more procedural, maybe even lighthearted, jokey version of the show, because they were probably told at the time, you know, years ago, they were probably told like that's the direction they want to go in. So, okay, that's what they made. I don't know. That's my thoughts on that. Anyways, let me know what you guys think about Daredevil Born Again. I think ultimately, you know, like, if you go in knowing what happened in the production, you'll probably have a better time, you know, and if anything, you can be like, okay, this is where they kind of stitched this on, this is where this part, they're kind of like trying to force these pieces to fit together. But I don't know, I enjoyed it enough to where I'm not disappointed. You know, I'm like, okay, I can acknowledge some of it's weaker than other parts, but I think it ended on a strong note, and I'm here for it. So anyways, let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.